Well, welcome back. We are now at point number 7 of AHOA's 12 Points video series on the 12 Points of Fair Franchising. And I am very pleased that we have a guest with us here today. We have our AHOA Vice Chairman, Bharat Patel. And Bharat, if you would like to say hello to the audience.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
As we begin this 12 Points, point number 7 series, we will just remind everyone that the purpose of this is to continue to seek victory after victory in the battle for fair franchising. And as we've explained in the past, some important tools that we have for you as we seek to educate and provide tools to our members on the various points. The first is AHOA's educational primer. You can download this from the website, and it does include each of the 12 points. Another important tool that we are providing to you is the AHOA 12 Points Questionnaire. Let's jump right into point number 7. The main theme is maintaining and building relationships with franchisees. Franchise agreements establish fruitful, long-term business relationships between franchisors and franchisees. Franchisors should strive to build on and maintain these relationships with the franchisees by 1, tangibly recognizing their value, and 2, effectively communicating with their franchisees. Franchisors should recognize the value of the long-term franchisee relationships. Now, many franchisees successfully remain in the franchisor's franchise system through the term of their license. But what happens when there's a renewal of the license? AHOA advocates in this point that there should not be high renewal fees and additional personal guarantees if the franchisee has already established their value to the franchisor. And I'm going to ask Bharat, what is your experience with this?
When renewal periods come up, typically we're talking about a 20-year contract. Renewal periods come up every 5 years unless they decide to sell or change the trademark, right? So there could be a situation where you're moving into the same brand family, same master franchisor, a different brand, or into a different brand. If the franchisee has been consistent in, for example, paying their franchise fees, upholding the standards of the brand, they should be treated, fairly in the sense of when the renewal period comes up, there should be the least amount of cost to the franchisee because of what they're investing in the brand, right? They're investing millions of dollars. Some franchisees, especially if they're starting out, they've spent their entire life savings to get into this business. And I think it does a disservice not only to the brand, but to the franchisee if they're charging, these, outrageous, obnoxious transfer fees or additional fees just to sustain and continue that same brand.
That's where AHOA really believes that it's time to implement some fairness. And just to give an example of how the AHOA questionnaire might assist you with this, if you download the questionnaire, you can see on this point specific questions that you could ask your franchisor both before you sign that first franchise agreement and then also as you're looking at possibly relicensing. For example, the first question is, do you waive the relicensing fees for long-term franchisees? A critical component. Number 2, do you waive personal guarantees for franchisees who have performed well and according to the franchise agreements? Or alternatively, do you provide for a very limited time period for such personal guarantees determined by the parties after reasonable review and negotiations? What are your thoughts on how that should be handled?
Well, I've always been a fan of a burn-off period. And so what I mean by that is when a licensee first enters into agreement, it's different than year 5, year 10. So, say for argument's sake, it's $1 million personal guarantee. Let's burn that off over time so the licensee sees progress in relationship and the franchisor is also feeling comfortable with this licensee. And so I think it's very important to include provisions like this that can help build the relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor.
And so when you talk about a burn-off period, what you're then referring to is that the amount of the personal guarantee would be different in year 1 than year 5 or year 10. Is that correct?
When the renewal periods pick up, right? Because it really doesn't make sense that you're still, personal guarantee for a large sum of money in year 1 as you are in year 5, year 10. Similarly, these agreements that we do with banks and other financial institutions, they have burn-off periods. So,
Well, let's jump then to the second subpart of point number 7. And that is, again, building on the relationship, but this is with the franchise advisory councils and the franchisee associations. So AHOA's point here is that franchisors should strive to build on the relationships with their franchisees by actively seeking feedback from the franchisees themselves and by working with the various councils and associations that represent the franchisees. And this would include the brand franchisee associations, franchise advisory councils, the FACs, and the franchise advisory brands, as well as AHOA. And Bharat, you have experience working on some of these associations. Tell us what you see as the benefit of being involved with those.
Right. So I strongly encourage anyone that's in the industry to be involved with their franchise advisory council, their owners council, the franchise advisory board, because this is your conduit, this is your voice in the system. And if the franchise advisory council or board remains true to their mission statement, which is representing the voice of the owners, the voice of the operators, that's also key. But that can only happen if the owners and operators participate. And as the franchisor understands the franchisee better, they can improve on the system too. So really it is a two-way street, two-way dialogue, but it only works if our AHOA members, our fellow hotel owners and operators participate.
So with that, again, I would like to introduce you to a few other experts who can address why this is such an important point, and we will have them join us now.
Point number 7 is, in my mind, is more important as well, because once you sign the franchise agreement, it's a two-way street. It's like a marriage, right? Once you're married to someone, you have to compromise, you have to work with each other. It goes same way. One must maintain and build a relationship to get positive results. Before I started my journey and when I signed my first franchise, not very many senior members at the franchise knew me. Now, a lot of franchise leaders, the senior members knows me, and that goes a long way. They get to know me, I get to know them. We know personally each other very well. And as point number 7 says, it's about maintaining and building the relationship. Before signing the franchise agreement, and before franchise agreement you sign, you read them, you be aware of these 12 points, because that's the key. When you sign any franchise agreement, you need to be aware of it. If you need help, get a professional help out there. Don't just sign the agreement and be aware of it, that what's involved. Because like I said earlier, it's a long-term working relationship. It's a partnership.
And this dovetails nicely into the area of franchisee associations and franchise advisory councils addressing 2 key concerns of franchisees. The first is amenity creep, and then the second one is also marketing and advertising. So let's address amenity creep first. Amenity creep is a recognized problem in the hotel industry. And franchisees are concerned that they're not being heard about these new fees that are being added on a regular basis. Franchisors should regularly seek input from the FACs concerning whether specific amenities should be added, changed, revised, and they should especially be seeking such information and such input when the cost is being borne solely by the franchisees themselves. And pursuant to our point number 7, AHOA submits that to be fair, the franchisor should submit the issue for a vote to the franchisees themselves and obtain at least a 2/3% vote on this, or get approval from an independent FAC. So Bharat, let's talk about amenity creep. Why is this such a concern in the industry, and what are we referring to here?
Well, especially now post-COVID, there's a lot of things going on, right? So you have inflation issues, supply chain issues, and then if you add amenity creep, that's just, another issue when it comes to the bottom line. And so I think many of our franchisees and the people I know in the hospitality industry, I think they all agree that we need a real reckoning or a real look at what each amenity costs, what the cost is, and is the franchisor willing to come up with something as close as possible as to cost plus. And then the second piece of this is what's that return on the investment? It's just as important. One of the other things is let's test market. Let's see how it evolves into that brand, because everything the brand adopts may not work for the public at that time.
So let's then jump to the second part of this, marketing and advertising fees. And as this point discusses, that again, franchisors should regularly seek the input from the FACs or the franchisee associations concerning how best to market and advertise the brand. And the reason it's important to address this with the FACs is because sometimes a lot of these marketing fees are collected and it's unclear to the franchisees how they are being spent. So what is your experience with these marketing and advertising fees?
Right, transparency is a word that's been overused, but I think it's been underutilized. And so what I mean by that is you should know going in what it's going to cost. Whether you're in the hotel business, the restaurant business, or other verticals, it's pretty clear in most franchise agreements what you can, what you can expect. Right now, there's a situation where there's new fees that could be compounded, at a quarterly or even an annual basis. You're paying it monthly, but these new fees are being introduced. And look, I understand the level of technology, the pace of technology, and things that happen and change. But I think the best way is as you're entering the relationship, and it's clear what is expected of you, what's expected of them. And that's what makes a great relationship.
The final subpart that we're going to address under this point number 7 is AHOA Relations. And this promotes that franchisors should strive to work closely with AHOA and its members to promote fairness in the franchise system and to enhance their respective business interests. And we have said this many times this year, but the reason AHOA is promoting fair franchising is to sustain the business model of franchising. That is the only way to ensure that we can continue to do this on a long-term basis.
I've heard from many brands that they want to be able to communicate with their franchisees more effectively, right? And I bring out to them that most of our members have more than one property, and most of the time it's in more than one brand family. So really, what they're doing is they are organizing their assets in a certain way, and they want to get information. I truly believe that many of them look to AHOA for that communication, for that clarity, and what's happening in the industry. And so all we're looking for, I think all the licensees, the franchisees, and the AHOA members are looking for is a more progressive relationship, one that's more balanced, and one that addresses their concerns when it comes to, not only strategic engagement with the brand and what their vision is for the future, but also the bottom line.
Well, thank you. Very insightful input on these issues. So that concludes our educational section on point number 7. And again, we would strongly encourage you to download AHOA's 12 Points of Fair Franchising from the website, as well as the 12 Points Questionnaire, so you can continue to learn how best to address these points with your franchisor and ask specific questions on the points that are most important to you. And again, we would encourage you to pick up your 12 Points pins so that we can wear them en masse at the upcoming AHOA convention. And we look forward to working with you closely as we strive for victory to victory in the battle for fair franchising. So join us next time. We will be addressing point number 8, but thank you. Thank you for your participation, and we look forward to continuing this discussion in the near future.